I have the pleasure of having Jillian here with me in studio. And when I think of introducing Jillian, I really go back about 4 years when she left Detroit and moved to San Francisco for a significant leadership job with one of our competitors. And my phone started ringing off the hook. And it was from Kathy Weaver in Detroit. And she kept telling us, we have to hire her, we have to hire her, we have to hire her. And Kathy was a great supporter, and the world's aligned, and 3 years ago or so, you joined us. You came in as an account executive on global large accounts, little accounts like Uber, a lot of ride sharing, a lot of technology, and also ran sales as the RSD. Now you're doing digital economy practice, but you also racked up some hardware along the way. She was named as a woman to watch by Business Insurance last year and a power broker. So someone asked me, how many are women to watch from BI? And I said, just one, and it's her. So welcome to InExpo, and tell us a little bit about what digital economy is and a little bit about your practice.
Sure. So we're really thinking about digital economy in 3 distinct areas. The first, as you mentioned earlier, is alternative mobility. So we see traditional mobility being things like the OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers, dealerships, supply chain. But in alternative mobility, we're really looking at things like car share, ride share, subscription auto, which we'll talk about in a minute, and autonomous vehicles. And then what does that mean for our clients who are both in that space and entering that space? The second area that we're focusing on is what we're calling the future of work. So there's a movement globally for workers who used to be employees to now being independent contractors. May not seem like a big impact, but that decoupling of the employee-employer relationship changes both the way that our commercial clients attract and retain talent, but it also changes their relationship in other ways. And there's risk issues that are addressed both kind of on the life and health side of the business, but also on the property and casualty part of our business. And the last area is new economy digital risk. So what does that mean? Well, some of that could be employers and commercial businesses who have derived specifically out of the digital economy. So you can think about the Ubers and Airbnbs, TaskRabbits, open up your mobile phone, all those apps, that's digital risk. But it also could be our traditional businesses who have a foray now in the digital world. So think about Walmart buying Flipkart or Target buying Shipt. Those companies now have a different risk profile than they did before, and one that requires a different conversation than we've offered them in the past.
I love how you describe your practice, and it includes the future of work, which is absolutely on the people side of the business. I think that's great, and you can see where that's going more and more, not just talking about risk constantly. We also have something at Aon, a team called DSI. What is it, who is it, and what's its purpose?
So have any of you heard of the DSI community?
I did.
It's okay if the answer is no, until now. Lori Goldterman and Bill Vitt have seen a new market opportunity for us as an organization. And you'll notice that they come from different parts of our business or view of who our client is. DSI, Digital Solutions Innovation Community, is a group of individuals across Aon, I think there's about 8 or 10 of us, who are looking at creating solutions through digital capabilities. So think about, in the past, we hadn't looked at kind of the micro client or the very small clients as being a portion of who we want to address as our client base. But through the DSI community, we will be addressing those clients. We have opportunities, particularly through our commercial clients who say they have a constituency, sometimes it's even their clients that they want to address through an insurance need. Maybe it's a warranty solution. It could be like insurance for truckers. We're working on personal auto solutions. Typically, they're kind of transaction-based, delivered through a digital model. And the DSI community is here to evaluate those opportunities and determine which ones we want to make an investment in as an organization.
Yeah, and I'm really happy about having that team. And again, you're talking about crossing over practices, working with other industries such as Mike Stankert and also other business units like Affinity. So I think you're going to come see a ton of clients and prospects, which brings me to how we always make it real here. You've got account executives, you've got producers, you've got SAMs, you've got a lot of people on the phone. what should we be asking in discovery? What should we be listening for to think about, do we have a match on the digital economy practice?
Sure. So just because a client has a digital presence doesn't necessarily mean that they're a great fit for this conversation. And the distinction to me is that if there's a pivot in their business model that's enabled by a digital transaction or digital capabilities, which means they're doing business differently than they were before. If it's just a different distribution channel for the same thing, there's probably not, a unique effort that's needed from my practice. But how is the digital economy influencing their business decisions? That's a question you can ask them and hear the answer for. Have they worked with independent contractors before, and is that relationship changing? Are they hiring more independent contractors or having a different relationship with them? What's their growth and acquisition strategy? There's a real movement across many industries to personalize business. It's what's being called the concierge culture. And if the concierge culture is affecting your clients, and it is, that often means that they have to start doing business differently in order to address their clients. So just think about, I mentioned Target earlier. They're a large, great long-term client for us. They purchased Shipt, which is an organization that shops for and delivers Target goods to consumers. That's a very different way of thinking about the relationship between Target and their guests, and also includes a very new set of risks and exposures to address, and one that's just a very welcome and exciting opportunity for us as a firm.
Awesome. Great explanation. And plus, we can always call you.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. I hope you do.
I got it. You talked about Target. You talked about Uber. A little bit about Airbnb. Is this play large market, middle market, startups? I mean, where do you sort of land?
The answer is yes.
Good.
So it is. I mentioned the big names because you can relate to those names and they make sense to you in conversation. But I would also say we want to be relevant in new business models that have potential for explosive growth. So if this is a new business model that's replicatable across other companies in the future, or you see that this is something that's going to grow, but it has a business model that's digitized in some way, or the solution to it from Aon is a digital solution, I hope that you'll call me. And those could be startups. If I can use a quick example, I'll give a quick shout out to Michael Brody and Andrew Teagarden, who identified a startup called Clutch a couple of years ago, and through that we were able to develop a real strategy around subscription auto, a unique value proposition for them, which at the time was, I would call it innovation, and today it's really moving from being innovative to being complex broking. And so now we're using that same strategy to address subscription models across at least a dozen OEMs, large car manufacturers, as well as dealerships and other companies.
So once you do one, it's easy to replicate, and kind of talk me through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I would say yes and no, again, sorry. But sure, I mean, there are opportunities where once we've solved for one, it gives us a leg up, certainly, and maybe 80% of the way there, like in subscription, to solving the next one. And those are the ones where we would like as an organization to put the most focus on, because obviously it's adding value both for our clients but to us as a firm. And then there's certain complex broking solutions that are unique to that business model, and those are typically going to be our larger clients where making that investment in the innovative broking solution makes sense.
So talk me through, you talked about there could be some unique solutions. So I bring you out to a client or a prospect. We're going to talk about innovation, the practice, thought leadership, having this great cerebral conversation, and say this client or prospect gets to a point where we have to do a transaction. What should my expectation as an AE, and more importantly, the expectation of the clients, seeing that it's not like you have forms and this is relatively new?
Right. So when it's something that we haven't done before, we, Aon, need to come together as a team internally and oftentimes include the client on what we want the final deliverable to look like, whether that's a product or a service. What does the solution look like? The underwriters within our carrier partners who are working on this space tend to be one or two people within even the largest organizations, not across all offices. So part of the solution is going to be who are our carrier partners, and who within those specific carriers can we access to get to kind of the creative thinkers and those. It isn't going to mean that we're going to bring 5 quotes to the table and see which one is less expensive.
Yep.
It just doesn't work that way. Typically, kind of that last mile is done alongside one carrier, maybe 2, to create kind of this bespoke solution for the client.
You talked earlier about this being really an Aon United approach, being driven by our clients and prospect. In that scenario of us getting to a solution, can you kind of describe one carrier, but can you describe more of the Aon United approach?
Yeah, these clients, as they're looking at the new risk issues, they're not looking for, they're not going to come to you and say, I need someone from reinsurance, I need someone from affinity, I need a technology. No, they've got a problem to solve, and they're looking for us to cross the organization to solve it for them. And in my experience on these accounts, what it takes is a wider view of who we are as an organization and how we solve for risk. And that is going to include, oftentimes, our affinity colleagues, but it's going to include reinsurance and people from all across the firm rather than maybe just your office as we typically do it. So some of our brokers, as an example, who are specific in alternative mobility, those brokers have an expertise. It might be someone from the logistics practice, it might be somebody in Atlanta, it might be somebody in San Francisco, and we're going to pull the best person in to help solve for them.
So as this continues to change, clients need change, what's your vision of the digital economy practice, and again, what the landscape with your practice in the insurance markets are going to look like, say in the next couple of years? In your case, next couple of months.
Right, yeah, it's all moving so quickly. It's an evolving vision. What's very clear in the short term is that we need expertise in broking in a way that we haven't looked at it before. And what I mean by that is some of these projects are so big and so complicated. The good news is that means we're adding tremendous value and we get very good revenue from our clients. But they're so big and so complicated that it's helpful to kind of take someone offline and dedicate them to a project for a period of time. That period of time might only be a month, but it also might be 3 months. And you can't take a typical account executive and a typical broker and dedicate them like that away from their other client activities. So we'll be looking at what does for example, a mobility broking team look like within our organization, and how can we support these efforts within the firm. And I think you'll also see 2 other things. You mentioned cross-functional teams. You can see by our 3 pivot points of alternative mobility, the future of work, and the digitization of the economy, that those 3 are not just property and casualty, and they're not just
pretty cool.
health. Yeah. So we're going to be bringing in individuals from across the community and certainly globally, because once we create something innovative in one geography, what does our client say? Can we take that to Europe? Can we take that to Asia? Or they say, we did this in Asia, can we take that here? And we need to be able to do that quickly.
That's pretty cool. So we have a leader, we have a practice, we have an infrastructure. Where do we stack up against the competition?
Way ahead of the competition.
By how far?
So hard to measure, but here's what I'll say is that our competitors are not looking at risk in this way. Our competitors are continuing to look at risk and industry practices the way that they did, candidly, 10 years ago. And so I think we do have the leg up in this type of conversation. And I do think that our thought leadership and our focus and investment on broking is going to surpass our competitors. Our next closest competitor, as it usually is Marsh. They do have a sharing economy practice, but that is a section of what we're doing here, but it's a small section, to be candid. And they do have a mobility broking team, but it's a couple of people in different offices who have full-time jobs doing something else. So I think you'll see us pull ahead quickly.
I'll give you a chance to brag a little bit. Give us a quick synopsis of a recent win or a success.
Sure. So we have been working on an original equipment manufacturer, a large car company, for a long time with very little success of moving it forward. Great relationships with the risk manager, but we're just not getting the business sold. They asked us for thought leadership and alternative mobility. And back to a cross-functional team, I was really proud to serve on a team with Mike Stankard, who leads our automotive practice, Christian Hoffman, and Damian Reel from Strauss-Freeburg. And the 4 of us held a conversation with about 20 people from that original equipment manufacturer around alternative mobility. And they literally called the next day and said, we were so impressed, can you come out again? We want to talk further. And of course, the right answer is, of course we can. And now it's time for the engagement, which we will be doing.
It's a great story. So if we need content, if we have prospects, clients, we want to strategize, what do we do?
Our Aon Avenue page went up today. I'm excited to announce. And we will be adding more content there, so stay tuned. We're working on that now. But please feel welcome to either reach out to Josh Sanders. He's on the Aon Avenue page if you want his contact information, or myself.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, and
Thank
we're
you.
all behind you, and get ready to get lots and lots of calls and opportunities.